Hier in Hamburg feierte The Help Deutschlandpremiere.
26 Millionen Dollar spielte der Film allein am ersten Wochenende in den USA ein. Als Box-Office-Erfolg kam er dann zum Filmfest.
Hollywood in der Hansestadt und wir sind hautnah dabei. Ich werde gleich Emma Stone und Viola Davis treffen und die werden mir Frage und Antwort stehen.
Und ich spreche mit Regisseur Tate und Schauspielerin Octavia Spencer über The Help. Der Kinostart hier in Deutschland ist übrigens der 8.12.
So Tate, it's always difficult to screen a novel. How did you start the whole project?
Well, the good thing about when I adapted it was I got the rights to the book when Catherine Stockett, the author, did not even have a publisher. So when I went off to adapt the novel, the book was not even a success. It wasn't even being published. So I didn't have that pressure. And I think that's what the biggest aid was in my doing my job successfully, is there were no fans. So when I had finished, then the book came out, and I was already comfortable and happy with what I had done, so there wasn't that pressure, and that's probably what saved me in the creative process.
Octavia, and what part of your character is in Minnie?
You mean what part of me as a person? Our height and weight. That's and I can be pretty feisty. That's perhaps, you know, what I know of me that is Minnie. Everything else is a wonderful collaboration of director and actor. It's all a part of what is written in the text of the novel, and lots of internet research on spousal abuse.
Mm-hmm. What impressed you while reading the screenplay? What impressed you?
Well, what impressed me, I got to read the manuscript, right? Tate, you know, and I have known each other for about 17 years. We've been friends, and after he read the manuscript for the novel before it was published, he asked me to read it. And then as he was adapting the screenplay, I was able to read it. And first of all, I love Southern writers, the way we tell stories. And I love Tate's sense of humor and Catherine's sense of humor. And I love the fact that this was told from the perspective of the domestics. It wasn't a white story. It wasn't a black story. It was indeed a good story.
Emma, you've played the role Skeeter. What kind of person is Skeeter?
Skeeter is a young, at times idealistic, deeply feeling writer. And she is someone who very much loved the woman that raised her, Constantine, and felt like she couldn't quite ever live up to her mother's expectations of her, because she's not a beauty, and her mother was a beauty queen. So she's a complicated girl.
And do you like her?
No, I hate her.
You hate her? Why?
No, I love Skeeter. I absolutely love Skeeter. I think that she was the way I saw into the story. When I read the book, that was the character I saw into the story through. I mean, you see into the story through Aibileen and Minnie and Skeeter, and I think my favorite character in the book was Aibileen, but Skeeter herself, I could identify with a lot of parts of her, and I saw her goodness without being like an incredibly self-sacrificing character, which I think in a lot of books, you know, there's a 23-year-old girl who is just so different from her friends, and it's just this innate quality, and I don't know anybody like that. I think that's a learned thing, that's experienced through time, and Skeeter does experience that and does change because of Aibileen and Minnie and her experience. So I thought that was really great.
And how did you prepare for the role?
There were a lot of ways. Tate gave us a documentary series called Eyes on the Prize, which was really incredible. It was about 60s in the South during this era, and it was incredibly informative and really great. And I watched Or I read a book on the Jim Crow laws. I also read a book called Remembering Jim Crow, which was the story of about 25 people during that era, remembering just what it was like day-to-day life.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was amazing. Do you want it?
Yeah.
I'll give it to you. It's
Excellent.
incredible. It's 25 people that lived in that era, and just kind of talking about daily experiences of the ordinary person and things that they remember, things that they experienced. And but then on top of all of that, I had to remember, I wanted to go to school to be a journalist when I was younger, and so I had to remember kind of that mindset. It made me feel more inquisitive and learn to type on an old typewriter, and you know, it was things like that. Just becoming a writer again was really interesting.
Yeah. Viola, you played Abilene. This is such a complex person. Was it hard for you to play this role?
Yes.
Why?
Because just all the elements of being the complicated woman that she is in 1961. She is a woman who is definitely a product of that generation. And I'm very much a 21st century girl who went on to school, who left her small town, and you know, and Abilene is a woman who quit school in the 6th grade to help her parents and her mom with the bills. And she's very quiet. She's lost a child. I had to gain weight. Everything about her was different from who I was, except for the quietness. I have a tendency to be quiet. And also just the way she feels on a day-to-day basis, just being in that mindset of someone feeling invisible and less than.
And how would you describe Abilene in 3 words?
3 words? Oh gosh. Loving, strong, survivor.
Okay. And The Help is talking about the history about Black people in the USA. How do you feel about this issue? How important is it for you?
Well, it's very important because I am Black. So it's really, really important to me because it's my story. You know, I always feel like in some way I'm defending my rights to be exactly like everyone else. I mean, I kept thinking, I did a movie, Doubt, several years ago, and, you know, when we were doing promotion for that movie, my questions for that movie were exactly the same as they are with this movie. Mm-hmm. And they were mostly questions about race. So I feel very important, I feel very, very strongly about wanting to be like everybody else. People wanting to value me the same as they would anyone else. To see my beauty, to see my intelligence, and for that to even just not, my color not be an issue.
Yeah. Emma, you're just 22. How was it for you to go back to the 60s?
It was interesting. It was very separate. You know, it was actually being involved in the scenes. You see the separation between white people, African Americans. You really feel it. And that was pretty mind-boggling to me because that wasn't my direct experience as a 22-year-old. I've never had that experience. It was also, you know, everything's different in the 60s. You're smoking all the time. You're driving these old cars. You're wearing these different undergarments. I mean, even just being in Mississippi, you're in the heat, and everything just feels different.
And you're smoking while pregnant. Because,
smoking while pregnant,
because nobody knew.
While pregnant. Yeah.
Yes, I know.
Eating ambrosia. God.
I know. What was that?
Marshmallows and Jell-O. It was pretty disgusting. And mayonnaise sandwiches. But it was definitely a different experience. But the core of everything is the same. You also see just how similar the people's wants were and people's dreams were. They wanted to, you know, they wanted love and friendship, and we've always been. There's that movie Midnight in Paris. Have you seen that?
Yes, I have.
And it's about the sentimentality of the past, and you always think you wanted to live in a different era, or that era was better than this one, or it was so romantic back then. And that movie's basically about the fact that every time period has its struggles. really living now is the time you want to live.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
so, you know, it sounds fun to go back to the 60s, but really it was, you know, a lot of similar struggles that we have now.
So is The Help a kind of family project for you?
It absolutely is. I mean, I think that's, again, much like I said, when we began the project, the book wasn't in print. We also put in place at that time the idea that this was going to be really hard and we were going to have to all work together and just raise money to make it. So we had this, that's all we've ever done. So we had this core base of friends supporting each other. Allison Janney, who plays Skeeter's mother, we all just said, okay, what do we got to do? So then when the movie was funded and the book came out and DreamWorks came on board, they saw that spirit of friendship and collaboration and family. And they wisely saw that that will go onto the screen. And they did not want to disrupt it. So in many ways, we made an independent film and DreamWorks paid for it.
So Octavia, how was it to play as an actress in such a familiar atmosphere?
Well, it definitely made the subject or the time period easier to digest, considering the only person who really perhaps lived it was Cicely Tyson, and remembered it enough. It was a foreign time to all of us, and we understood the gravity of the situation, and it was pretty much our support group. So we felt free to be and then to play and explore those characters, and whatever our jobs were on the set, it was pretty spectacular.
And as Mini, how would you touch the spectators?
I think the spectators will be touched by the fact that Minnie is not a product of her time, just as Skeeter and Aibileen are perhaps, I would consider, and Celia, Jessica Chastain's character, I would consider all of them, not just Minnie, progressive women at a time where women were supposed to be more like children, seen and not heard. But these women defied that and were a part of changing the culture and their community.
Tate, so racism is a background of the whole movie and the plot. Do you think the topic is in the past or in the present?
Well, I think if you remove the word racism as it directly relates to African Americans in the South being judged and having their rights taken away, and you bring back into modern day subjects, you know, such as you've said, ageism, you know, the rights of homosexuals to marry. We as human beings are always replacing one group with another. So it's always going to be relevant, unfortunately. But fortunately, it's good for movies like this to make us talk. So no, African Americans are not treated this way in the South anymore, but there are other peoples all around the world that are now, and ones yet to be discovered who will be treated this way. So it's always universal, unfortunately.
So your movie is a box office success in the United States. So do you think with which topics inside your movie you can become a big success in Europe?
Well, just basically what I said. I think anytime, you know, the reason we go to movies and the reason we go to books is often fantasy, which is when it's fun to have science fiction and robots and horror. But at the bottom line of all fantasy and science fiction and drama are characters, rich characters that are really fully developed and fleshed out. And The Help is ordinary people that we can all see ourselves in. And if you go see The Help, you will experience pretty much every emotion that humans have. I mean, from jealousy, rage, anger, happiness, sorrow, joy, and at the end, hope, which I think for an audience member, that's what we go to the movies for.
To have a last question. So you're in the movie, you're a cook, you're a very good cook, and then you said, no, I'm not a good cook. So, but why?
Well, I have good friends who cook. And I'm from, it's just not, I think, I don't know, I'm not good at it. I don't find it. You know, people say...
You got to be interested in it.
Yeah, you have to be interested in it. I mean, I'm interested in eating well, not learning to cook well.
Okay.
Do you cook?
No, I'm
Are
a
you
student.
interested?
A little bit.
Yeah, so you
Yeah,
won't,
so-
you won't,
You won't learn. You won't learn.
Okay.
Interview und Premiere innerhalb weniger Stunden, für uns ein toller Abschluss des Filmfestes.
Ja, aber eins fehlt ja noch, nämlich unsere Bewertung. The Help ist für mich eine tolle Geschichte, die mit authentischen und sympathischen Schauspielern erzählt wird. Kurzum, 10 Punkte.
Da kann ich mich nur anschließen. Ein herausragender Film. Emma Stone, tolle Schauspielerin. 10+.
Ja, das war's für dieses Jahr. Wir sagen Danke an euch, wir sagen Tschö und euch ganz viel Spaß im Kino.
Tschüss.